world. And as a milestone here to show this point about renewable energy generation, this did not make big news, but it should have. Last fall, for the first time, renewable energy overtook coal as the primary source of electricity around the world. Hooray! The first time since the Industrial Revolution. And we're going to continue going in that path. So, we should pat ourselves on the back that things are, in this case, are definitely going in a very favorable way. Another reason for some hope is that we've learned a lot about how to deal with certain kinds of disasters, extreme weather disasters, especially heat. Especially since some of the early heat waves that produced a lot of deaths decades ago, communities have put together these heat wave action plans fostered by groups like the EPA, and they have common sense strategies. Things like publicizing heat wave forecasts. We're never caught off guard anymore by a major heat wave. The Weather Service forecasts have gotten so good that we know a heat wave's coming days, if not a week or two in advance, so we can warn people. Public cooling centers can be very helpful for people who don't have air conditioning, as long as we can get those people to the cooling centers, whether they're unhoused or people who just don't have air conditioning in their homes. We know who the vulnerable populations are in heat waves. It's the elder, it's the very old, it's the very young, it's the socially isolated, and it's the people who are on a lot of medications. So we can target them. Just checking on your neighbor, those neighbors in particular, can be very effective. And then at the other extreme, advocating for worker protections. The young, healthy, strong people are often the ones who have the greatest exposure on their jobs doing construction work, for example. So they need protection from extreme heat too. A really nice example here of how heat wave action plans are benefiting the country comes from Chicago. A good example for this audience, the famous, infamous now 1995 heat wave killed over 700 people. The city of Chicago really did not take it seriously at that time, nor did many other communities. 2012, we had a comparably severe heat wave, over 100 degrees for several days. There were only, what I saw were 18 deaths, a factor of 40 smaller than the 1995 heat wave. That is fantastic. And the more we learn about how to deal with extreme heat, hopefully the more those numbers will drop. My own feeling is that no one should die from extreme heat. That is, those heat wave deaths are completely preventable. And then transitioning to another part of why I feel some optimism, we've learned more and more about what are the most powerful levers when it comes to mitigating climate change, reducing carbon emissions. There was a New York Times bestseller that came out in the late 2010s called Drawdown. And it spawned a group called Project Drawdown that still exists. And it got together scientists and policymakers from around the world to sit together and create the most no regret strategies, the most substantive existing solutions to address climate change. And it went a step further. It said, not just the 100 best solutions in a laundry list, we want you to rank them according to how strong their levers are. And so they did this. And they've come up with a couple different lists over time, but the most recent one I found is this one. This is Project Drawdown's suggested list of the top 10 steps we can take to limit global warming by 2 degrees Celsius by year 2100. And I think it's fascinating, this top 10 list. It's counterintuitive in some ways, but not so counterintuitive in others. So let me walk you through it. The number one lever that they identified was reducing food waste. I would not have guessed that. I don't think most of us would. And I think that that's a great one because nobody wants to waste food. We don't want to waste it for economic reasons, for moral reasons, and now for climatic reasons. Food production is such a huge carbon emitter overall that anything we can do to reduce that food waste has a big impact on the climate. A second one that's food related is shifting more toward plant-rich diets. Doesn't mean everybody becomes a vegan, but people who eat meat or eat a lot of meat eat less meat or eat certain kinds of meat that produce fewer carbon emissions. Family planning and education made it near the top of the list regarding population growth. A couple that really were kind of esoteric were involved refrigerant management and alternative refrigerants, because the coolants that go into refrigerants are extremely powerful greenhouse gases, way more powerful than CO2. So if those leak into the atmosphere, they trap a lot of heat. And then some of these ideas in the top 10, we probably would have come up with: deforestation, reforestation, photovoltaics of both kinds, and onshore wind turbines. Another one here that made the top 10 list: clean cooking stoves, especially in developing countries. Those are a major source of carbon emissions. So I think this offers great hope. It helps to prioritize what things we can do to have the biggest bang for our buck in terms of climate change. And now I'm going to end on a personal note. I am not one who's typically big on New Year's resolutions. I figure if you don't make them, you can't break them. But in recent years, I have tried to adopt this one. Uh, there is a lot to bark about in the world, and it's okay, I think, to bark, but we can't forget to wag. We've got to make sure that we bring happiness to this, and it's not only because it'll help our mood, but it'll help the cause. And I just came across a really inspiring essay by a man by the name of Rhett Butler, and that is from Gone with the Wind fame. But the 21st century version of him is the creator of Mongabay, Conservation and Environmental News Service. And he wrote an essay recently, and I've got the QR code if you want to look at the whole thing. The whole point is optimism, he says, is not a mood, it is a method. And what he means by that is that we need to be optimistic. We need to record our victories, even small ones, because they pile up, kind of like the renewable energy, drip by drip by drip. They make a difference. And over time, they can exert a very strong lever, in this case, when it comes to climate change, or more generally in his discourse in terms of conservation and environmental issues writ large. So I will stop there with my 25 minutes or so and be happy to hear comments from all of you, and questions about my talk or comments that you have, and just carry on this discussion for the next 15 or 20 minutes.
Thank you, Steve. I get to pepper you with the questions from the Q&A, and as you can see on the screen, we've got a way to do that online. You can also drop them into the chat. I'm going to start with one that I think has a quick example based on your top 10 list back there. What do you recommend we focus on, thinking about particular actions and advocacy we can do from where we are?
Well, I've really been promoting the food waste one, because that's one that we can do immediately. I mean, like tonight, look at your refrigerator, try to do a better job of avoiding food waste ourselves. But of course, individual actions, trying to cook without wasting food, that is the drip 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 that we need, but we need it at a much bigger scale too. Working together, trying to do things on a more societal scale is important too. Another important one I tell people is to vote. That is one way that we can express our opinions. Climate is not the only issue that we vote on, but it is one of many. And if you want to have a say, even a small say, that's something that we can do. Another one that made the top 10 list there was shifting toward more plant-based diets. I think it's important, though, not to be preachy about this and say, oh, you're eating meat, you're a bad person. That's not at all the case. What that is pushing for is simply kind of on the spectrum of, say, meat eating. Shifting toward a more plant-based diet is healthier in general, and depending on the type of meat, it can also reduce one's carbon footprint. So I think these are all things, individual actions, and then groups like yours working collectively, where you have much more synergy because you are working in tandem rather than just as individuals. But I don't think it's an either or. This is an all hands on deck crisis that we're dealing with when it comes to climate change. We need to have both approaches.
Yeah, one of the statistics that blew my mind when I joined Faith in Place was finding out where in the process our food waste was.
Ah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
83% of it is after it gets to us, the end consumer. And
Yeah.
sometimes my fridge fully validates that, but I've been working on it really hard.
All of us, yeah,
Um,
we all have things we can work on, and that does depend on where in the world you live, what proportion comes at different points in the food chain. But this kind of approach, analyzing things, where are the sources of these waste that we need to fix? That's a great rational approach.
One of our next questions ties into what you were just saying is many of our drawdown solutions are personal when fossil fuel industry and outputs are still the big primary systemic issue. How do we tackle that elimination of fossil fuel?
Well, as I pointed out, there's already a lot of good direction going in terms of cleaner energy sources. And I know it's easy to sort of bash fossil fuel companies, but they are providing something that we're all demanding. And so anything we can do to reduce the demand individually and collectively means that they're contributing less in terms of the total pollution. So I think those are really important steps that we can all take. And each person has a different individual carbon footprint. If you're a homeowner, if you live miles away from your workplace, it changes depending on where you are. It changes during the course of one's life. Somebody who's retired is no longer commuting into work, for instance. So we need to just take stock of ourselves individually, and then again, teaming up with others like this group does to have a more collective impact.
Next up is how do you think we can combat the natural disaster myth that attempts to ignore the fact a lot of these changes are man-made and mitigated? How do we do that collective shift?
Yeah, if I understand the question, it's not just attributing a natural disaster to, oh well, it just happened kind of thing, right? Yeah, so this is something that natural hazard experts, which I am not, have really harped on, that we should not use that term natural hazard anymore because really in terms of the damage from things like earthquakes or wildfires or floods, the actual damage is not natural. It is very much intertwined with what society does in terms of preparing or recovering from it. And so I think that all of us need that constant reminder because we've been trained to even use that term, natural disasters or natural hazards. But more and more, with humans having a bigger input on things or footprint on things, we see that very much that the any sort of disaster has a natural component and it has a human component too.
Yeah, in the insurance industry, those things are not natural disasters. They're acts of God, which has a particular flavor for a faith-based community to
Yeah, yeah, that's
think
an
about that
interesting
that way.
terminology there.
Um, Moving to a couple more local ones. In contrast to sea level rise, what's the impact on the Great Lakes that are near and dear to many of us on the call's hearts?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a lot trickier when it comes to the Great Lakes. You might think it'd be easier because it's a smaller body of water, but it isn't. I get asked a lot, simply, are the Great Lakes going to go up or down as a result of climate change? And we don't really even know that because there are reasons why it should go up. Heavier rainstorms, for example, should put more moisture, more water into the lakes. But on the other hand, there's greater evaporation in a warming climate, which should draw the lake levels down. And so, who's going to win that tug of war is not exactly clear. In the past decade, those of you who pay attention to the Great Lakes or who have spent much time near there have seen a dramatic shift from very, very low levels in the early 20 teens to near record high levels by 2020. It's entirely possible that we're going to be seeing more of these swings as both sides of rising levels and falling levels compete with each other in this changing climate. But that I would say is really a wild card, even though it has great implications. We all want to know the answer, but at this point, it's still an important research question that's being studied.
Yeah, where I am, we've been able to walk across the Mississippi River the last four falls due to drought
Right.
levels, which is just mind-boggling to hear about the mighty Mississippi. And then, oh, sure, you could walk across that thing. Um,
Yeah, and that's a great point, Wade. And one of the things, one of the consequences of climate change that I have not gotten into tonight so far is this idea of greater precipitation whiplash or weather whiplash, and going from extreme drought to flooding and back and forth. We've seen so much of that in the upper Midwest in recent years, and climate models suggest that we'll see more of that in the future. So it may not be just like, oh, we need to prepare for a wetter climate or a drier climate. We may need to prepare for both of those at the same time.
We are definitely seeing that down here in far downstate
Mm,
Illinois. We've
yeah.
got another question that's kind of coming at the same thing from two different directions. We've got a retired urban planner who's very interested in this on like municipal policy and ordinance, and then a community member who's very interested in like just how do we do this? So, do you have recommendations for how we can make our communities more resilient given the impacts of climate change?
Yeah, that's a question for people other than me, but I will say that there are lots of people addressing that question and tackling it. In my network, Wiki, the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts, we have 14 different working groups, and some of those include people with expertise on this topic. We have a community sustainability working group, for example, and they deal with questions like that. We have an infrastructure working group, and they too deal with questions like that. So each community is different. Some communities are more prone to flooding. Others, or major urban centers need to be concerned about that urban heat island. So it definitely depends on each community needs to address it themselves. But that's sort of a wishy-washy answer. But in part, I'm not an expert, but a lot of people are addressing this, and I do know that one size does not fit all when it comes to that question.
Is there a sense some of my communities are really engaging around that, and others feel like they have bigger concerns. And some places it's blended in the two. So when I'm working in East St. Louis, huge sewer issues related to stormwater, rainwater, flooding, um, and it all gets meshed together. Do you have any sense in terms of how we get people to think about them all together? Or I feel like sometimes we break it up into too many little chunks and don't see how they connect.
You mean different infrastructure components, for instance?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. I mean, we're too siloed as a society anyway, aren't we? In many examples. But in terms of emphasizing the importance of it, a colleague just sent me a blurb from USA today, that said that the FEMA has handed out $195 million to homeowners because of that flood last August. And that just shocks me that it's that big a number. And, that was a 14.5 inch rainfall, so it's going to do a lot of damage. But it's a reminder of just how expensive these events can be. And, had Milwaukee been better prepared, if they could have been better prepared, that number would have been smaller. It still would have been really big. But when you're talking, if you can even cut in half or cut in 10% some of these damages from the really worst disasters, that can have a large absolute change, a large positive absolute effect.
Certainly. We've got a couple questions related to federal government stuff that I'm going to try to pull together. Um, will our government continue to fund the Mauna Loa Observatory? What's the impact of shutting down NCAR? And then, do you feel confident that climatologists will have the data needed with NOAA having reduced resources? So, like, kind of what do you perceive the current federal situation for some of our knowledge, our ability to respond, prepare?
Yeah, boy, I don't think anyone has a crystal ball on this. A year ago, I heard some worries from colleagues about what might happen, and I dismissed them. I thought they were crying wolf. I thought, oh, it won't be that bad. We've seen it be that bad in some cases, and this questions about Mauna Loa continued funding. I have not heard the latest on that. I have heard that cuts to that have been threatened. There are other places we measure carbon dioxide in the atmosphere around the world, so some of those measurements could be picked up, but you never want to lose a multi-decade record. The NCAR, NCAR, that's the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Colorado. I have a personal connection with that. I collaborate with them constantly. I've worked out there as a visiting scientist. There's some of the best atmospheric scientists in the country, some of them some of the best in the world. And it would be a huge loss to our society and even have global implications in terms of the knowledge that we would lose and the measurements that we would lose if that center is closed. I am optimistic that in the end that won't happen. I feel like there's just not broad support across the political aisles for that to happen. NCAR has too good a reputation. So maybe I'm overly optimistic on that one, but I do feel in the end that that will not happen. And I'm certainly hopeful of that.
That's great. I'm just watching our chat, and we've got so many great resources coming through the chat that I hope our comms team's grabbing, and we'll send out the follow-up email. But if you haven't been paying attention to the chat, there's some great places that people could pick up on things that are being done locally and happening now, which is great because sometimes we miss things that aren't in our sphere of influence or our commute range.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I'm sure this is a very well-informed audience. I'd like to look at that chat and learn some things too, because like with all of us, there's information overload on the web. Even if you kind of keep track with any issue, you're always surprised. Oh, I never knew about that. So that's another reason it's great to have these meetings and share knowledge.
I think we are about to our call to action tonight and about to send to breakout rooms. But before, I want to give you just one chance to, you were saying wag more, bark less. My kids just got back from Hamilton, so smile more, talk less. What's kind of the message on the way out the door you want to give this group in terms of the wag more, bark less sense of things?
Yeah, well, I think that the point going back to the dinosaurs, I like to make the point that we have agency. You know, this is a problem or crisis, an issue, whatever, however you want to call it, that we humans created, and we have the ability intellectually and in terms of motivation and our social powers of working together to do something about it. And we don't want to get bogged down in the day-to-day rhetoric that comes out in the news, even though it's hard not to sometimes. That's why looking at these big picture trends, things like Rhett Butler and his group emphasize, I think is really healthy. I think we all need it both for our mood, but also to help advance the cause. That we don't want to get caught up in the weeds. We want to look at the light at the end of the tunnel that I think we are working toward.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Folks, I'd love for you to share your appreciation for Steve and what he shared with us tonight, particularly moving that focus to what we can do and being hopeful optimists in our communities, wagging more than barking. Um, we're going to start moving to our breakout rooms where we'll talk by state for a little bit. Please do, if you're in Indiana, sign up for Renewable Energy Day. If your House of Worship is connected with us as a green team, your coaches will be getting to you about Action Week coming up in the spring. And if there are things that you are interested in learning about from this, please do reach out to us and we'll see what we can connect you with in your community. And if it doesn't exist, we'll have that conversation about how to make it exist where you are. So, comms team is sending us out to breakout rooms. Thank you all.
Breakout rooms are now open. There's a few of you that have not put the room that you would like to join, so we will do that in a minute. Kelly, there will be a recording sent out ne later, early next week. Okay.
Could you put me in Illinois? This is Ray.
And that was
Ray?
Ray. Okay. Oh, yep. Got you.
Thank you.
Okay. For those of you that all are out of our tri-state area, I would ask you to pick one of our rooms, either Illinois, Indiana, or Wisconsin. Um, you can either go Cali, okay, Cali, Illinois. Dorothy Black, is there a room that you would like to join? Mary, is there a room you would like to join?
Illinois.
Illinois. Anne, Becca Marshall, is there a room you'd like to join? Sandra, is there a room you would like to join?
Yes, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, okay.
I missed the directions of how to join.
Yeah. Um, so if you are out of our tri-state area, I would ask that you join one of our other rooms, either Illinois, Wisconsin, or Indiana.
Well,
Would
what
you,
do you do? Just click on the two?
I will put you in the room. Is there a room you'd like to join?
Yes, Indiana.
Indiana, okay. I will put you in. Thank you so much. Nello, Ashinta, Austin, is there a room you'd like to join? Anne?
Illinois.
Anne, Illinois, okay. How about anywhere else in this room right now? Dave, Becca, Kumari,
Dave, Wisconsin, 3.
Dave. Okay, perfect. Dorothy, Nello, Ashinta, Kumari, JH, Karen, and Becca. Is there a room that you would like to join? Ashinta, okay.
Which Karen?
Karen
I
Tissinger.
tried to select the none of the above.
None of the above. Is there a room? Can I put you in the Wisconsin room?
I suppose.
Is there a room that you wanted to join?
No, I just thought you had a fourth room for everybody else. That's why I
Unfortunately, not today.
sure Illinois or Wisconsin. Wisconsin's fine.
Wisconsin's fine. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, last call. Dorothy, Nello, Kumari, JH, and Becca. Is there a room that you would like to join?